What's up, guys? My name's Brandon and welcome back to Apple Weekly. In this episode, we're going to discuss even more new features and changes found in iOS 18. We're going to explain what Apple Intelligence is, how it works, and why it's completely misunderstood, why Apple is not paying OpenAI for their partnership, a crazy AirTag story, and more. And as always, if you want to stay up to date with everything going on in the world of Apple and iOS 18, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below and check out the Apple newsletter. Okay, so before we talk about Apple Intelligence and the big misunderstanding there, let's talk about even more iOS 18 features and changes. So first off, if you missed my big, almost 1 hour video detailing all of the iOS 18 features, I will leave that link down below and also up in the cards. Make sure you check that video out. But of course, over the week, I've discovered a lot more features and changes. So the first one is live voicemail. So you can see that the UI is a little bit different here in iOS 18, but the main difference is right there. So what you see on the lock screen, it looked like a text message at first, but you will see that it's actually the transcription from that live voicemail that now shows up. The text now shows up in the notification on the lock screen. Also, you'll notice that the videos now loop in the Photos application. So right once it ends, it just starts playing again instead of just pausing. And also in the Photos application, you will notice that with screenshots or anything that takes up the full screen, you're actually able to see the full screenshot now. And then when you tap on that, it goes to the full screen view like we had in iOS 17. If you tap it again, it zooms out. So in the phone application, there's a couple of changes that actually make a big difference. And the first one is that when you go into the phone app into the Recents tab, you will notice that now when you tap on somebody's name, it doesn't call them right away. So I cannot tell you how many times I've accidentally called somebody because I just accidentally tap on their name right here. But now if you tap on that name, it just goes to their contact card. It does not call them. And that's because the call button is now over on the far right. And also the search function under Recents is super clutch. So now I can search for like Apple, for example, and it will show me all of the times that I called Apple or even voicemails. It will search through the transcriptions and pull those up here as well. And then of course we have T9 dialing. So if I wanted to type in Brandon, for example, I could just press 2 because you could see the B is under 2 and then the R is 7. So I type 2, 7 and then 2 again because the A is right there and so on. So if I start typing 272, you can see it starts BRA. So that is what T9 dialing is. Also on the lock screen with iOS 18, if you go to customize and you go to the lock screen, you know how you can change the actions down here now? You can actually change the shortcuts. Well, you can actually leave these blank as well. So if I leave them blank and go back to my lock screen, take a look at how clean that looks. Now, especially if I remove the recording a video focus mode, take a look at how clean that lock screen is now that we don't have any of those shortcuts down at the bottom. So that's how this wallpaper was meant to be shown. And if you want to get this wallpaper, I will leave that linked down below. It's part of the Rewind wallpaper pack. Also, if you're in a group chat and multiple people react to a message, you'll now be able to see all of those reactions on top of the message. And if you tap and hold, you get a new view of who left what reaction. So math notes is one of my favorite features in iOS 18 and macOS Sequoia and iPadOS 18. But did you know that you could actually use math notes not just in the calculator and notes application, but also in other applications such as messages even. And you even get a suggestion to only input the result. So you can see 525, if we tap on that, that's going to replace the math problem that got us to that solution. So you could actually just do the math in here, but only send the solution. And while we're on the topic of the calculator application, one thing I didn't show in my What's New video is the history function. So now up in the top left of the redesigned calculator app, we have these 3 lines with the 3 dots. If you tap on that, that will show you your history. So you can see up top, we have this equation. And if we tap on that, it will put it back in to the calculator app so you can maybe redo it or add on to it. So I can even add on to this, maybe if I want to put -6, for example, and now I have, that previous math problem, but with an additional step. And now both of those will show up here in the history. You could also remove them from the history or delete all if you would like. So a really subtle but a really important change in the Files application is the fact that we can now keep a file downloaded in iCloud permanently. So if you haptic press on a file, you'll notice that we have a new option for keep downloaded. And when you select that, you will see a new glyph next to the file name that shows that it's permanently downloaded and it will not be, deleted by, the cloud. So sometimes with iCloud Drive and the Files application, certain files just get put in the cache because they haven't been opened in a while and they have to re-download, from iCloud servers. But if you have this turned on, if you have a file set to stay downloaded, you will never have to re-download it again. And here's a fun one. If your iPhone 15 runs out of battery, it now shows the time up in the top left corner. Now there's also a couple of changes in the voice memos application. So number one, you can now record audio in stereo. So before you could only record voice memos in mono, but now you can record those in stereo. And plus we have transcription. So these work perfectly fine in beta 1. And if you go into the voice memo setting, that's where you can see the stereo recording option. Now here's a random one that I found pretty interesting. So if you go into the notes application, and I guess this is related to math notes, but if you put 76 divided by 6, for example, normally for the divided by sign, when you're typing it out like this, you just put the slash, but if you press equals and then you press space, it automatically turns that slash into a divided sign. Now the flashlight animation in the dynamic island caught everybody off guard with iOS 18, and it does a lot more than you think because, if you go up, if you push this up like so, that will increase the intensity or decrease the intensity, and you can see the animation changing along with it. And if you pull side to side, so if you pull this side to side, that will basically make the beam more direct on a subject or make it a wider beam, as you can see from the animation. Now, if you tap on that, you can see we have an animation there as well. So this is a weird bug that you're seeing live right here. Anytime I go out of the flashlight, it prompts me to remove the books application. That might be the most random bug I've ever seen. So let me show you again. If I just tap on this and I tap on the flashlight itself and then go back, yeah, it gives me the prompt to remove books. That is so random. That is the definition of beta life right there. Now there's also a few differences in the spotlight search. So I searched for MAV score the other night and you can see this is what it looks like on iOS 17. Here's what it looked like on iOS 18. So it looks a lot better on iOS 18 in my opinion. And then also if you go into it, that's what it looks like in iOS 18, whereas in iOS 17, it looked like this. So again, a nice enhancement in the spotlight search results. Also in the spotlight search, you will now see glyph icons underneath of the results. So for camera, for example, and it just shows a duplicate for some reason, but you can see two camera icons there. One of them is a glyph icon, and then next to Spark, you can see the little Spark glyph icon down there in the bottom right. So just another minor touch to Spotlight. And I also want to give you an update on the fitness load and the vitals features that are in watchOS 11, and also they show up on iOS 18. So first off, you can see the fitness application has a bug. It doesn't show my activity rings for some reason. But now if you go down to the training load, for example, you can see that mine is starting to take shape. We can see some of my graphs right here for walking and for cycling. You can see kind of how we're doing, and a really nice interface. And of course, in the health application, you can see my vitals are right up here up top, and you can see how those look. So we can see how everything is for the day, the week, the month, or 6 months. And for some reason, my wrist temperature is not showing up. So I do have data for this, but it's not showing up in my vitals for some odd reason. And then also in the health application, you can see the background is a little bit different. It's blurred. And if you go to edit, you can change the list of what's pinned, and you can move these around very easily in the summary view in health. But everything is not perfect in iOS 18. There are definitely a lot of bugs for beta 1. So I want to take a minute to talk about those. And I also want to talk about the performance, the battery life, and really if you should even be on iOS 18 beta 1 on your main device right now or not. So easily the buggiest part of iOS 18 so far is with the control center. So it's so clunky. So if you tap and hold right here and you start trying to expand, you will just notice how everything kind of runs away from each other. And right now it's working fine. But a lot of times when you resize these items, everything just kind of freaks out. And there's just been a lot of issues with the control center, which is expected. I mean, okay, so here we go. I don't know what's going on here, but yeah, so it's new. So it is expected. There's a lot of issues. I kind of just don't want to mess up what I have going right here, even though I already did. So I moved these two down right here. But yeah, there's still a lot of work to be done with the control center. But so far, you know, I'm liking the customization. It's grown on me quite a bit, but there are definitely a lot of bugs here. Also, one pretty major bug that I noticed is that hidden applications are not actually hidden. So you can see I hid an application down here. One of the new features in iOS 18 is where you can hide applications. So if you haptic press on it, you can require Face ID. So you'll notice that with the Tesla application and Instagram, for example, they are hidden. You're not supposed to be able to see them anywhere on the OS. However, you still can, and it's very simple. You just search in the settings for them. So if I search for Tesla, for example, it shows up right there. If I search for Instagram, for example, it shows up right there. And it also shows up in the storage section inside of settings general. You'll see it in here as well. So Tesla is right there. So Apple still has some work to do to make this fully hidden, to make these applications fully hidden on the device, but you can still see the hidden apps in certain areas and settings. Also, in my What's New video, I had a lot of people ask me how I was able to get the open in shortcut to work on the lock screen. So if you go to the lock screen and you search for these shortcuts, so the open app shortcut right here, you'll notice that it just disappears right away. So a lot of people ask me, how were you able to get an application to go in there when it just disappears every time? So if I try to tap on it, you can see nothing works. And the way around that is just tap on done and then go back into the customized section and then go into lock screen and then tap on it again, and then you can choose an application. And speaking of the notification center, a bug that a lot of people have been having is where they just simply do not get any notifications on the lock screen. Now, thankfully, there is a little workaround for that. So to work around that, you just need to go into your settings and then go to notifications and just tap on, one of these other ones and then go back to what you have your display as. So for example, if I had mine at count and it wasn't showing up, I just go to stack or list and then go back to count and they would show up again. The music haptics feature is bugged out like crazy. So not only can you not activate or deactivate this from the control center, but also for a lot of people, it didn't even show up in the settings. So the way I was able to get this to work is I had to force close out of settings. So if I force close out of settings and go back in, and then I instantly search for music haptics really quickly, it will show up there, but it does disappear after like 10 seconds for some reason. So you have to be quick when you search for it. Also, you'll notice that I sent that MacBook as a tapback reaction to that text message, and I looked on my iOS 17 devices and it doesn't actually show any tapback reaction at all. So what I noticed is that if you try to send a reaction to a message to somebody, so like if I go right here and I go to select an emoji, anything that's not a default, like haha, thumbs up, thumbs down, any of that, anything else that you choose will just simply not show up on the iOS 17 user's device. Now they will see the defaults, the heart, the thumbs up, the thumbs down, the haha, the exclamation, and the question mark. Those will show up, but nothing else will. Also, the screen time feature is just simply not working at all in iOS 18. So if I go into my settings and if I go into screen time, it just force closes settings and doesn't even open. And in the Files application, you'll notice that the Save As feature is gone. So you can no longer save. Like if I go to the share sheet here, you'll notice that we no longer have the Save to Phone or the Save As function where we can save something from files to our camera roll. That doesn't exist anymore in iOS 18, and I believe that is a bug. And we also have a lot of visual bugs on the home screen as well. Like some widgets just don't show a background at all, or some of the icons or widgets show a different color than what you're trying to show. Also, just a little note here, not fun fact, just a little note I wanted to say about the App Store. I think that's a bug as well. We don't have a dark mode icon for a first-party application. We have the App Store here. I have to put this on the second page because it doesn't look good with all the other dark mode icons. So Apple, get it together. We need that App Store to be in dark mode as well. But yeah, overall, iOS 18 is not bad. I mean, it's a lot more stable than I was expecting. Most of the bugs are just visual bugs. They're not really going to cause any major harm or any major, disturbances in your day-to-day life, like we've had in the past. So I think iOS 18 is actually pretty solid, and I think it will be okay for most people to put on their main device. Now, I'm not responsible for anything that happens. I'm just saying that it's been pretty stable for me and most people I've talked to. All of my financial applications, my banking applications, all of those work perfectly fine on iOS 18. So there's no like app compatibility issues. Everything is running pretty well for me so far. Now, if I go into the Geekbench scores, I actually scored pretty good in Geekbench as well for a beta 1. So we scored a 2937 on the single core and a 7237 on the multi-core. And if you compare that to iOS 17.5.1, it's not too far off. I mean, it's pretty close on the single core and also pretty close on the multi-core. So yeah, I think iOS 18 beta 1 is pretty solid, and I don't even think you need to wait until the public beta if you're willing to take the risk risk of just obviously seeing a lot of visual bugs that might be annoying. But other than that, there's really nothing that's made me wish I was not on the beta on my main device. Actually, I take that back. The one thing I do regret being on the beta for, but I have to because it's my job, is the battery life. Battery life has just simply not been great in iOS 18, and that's expected. That's the one thing you can always count on with these first betas, is that the battery life is going to be abysmal. So for some reason, I had a really weird bug where sound recognition took up a lot of my battery life in one day, and I didn't even have the feature turned on. So I'm not sure if that was a visual bug or what, but you can see over my last 24 hours and last 10 days, I'm using a lot more battery life than I typically do, with really not as much usage as I typically do. So that's indicative of pretty poor battery life. Okay, so now let's talk about what to expect next from Apple. So next up is going to be iOS 18 Beta 2 for developers. And I would expect that not next week, but the following week, the week of June 24th. We should see that second developer beta on June 25th. Typically, Apple releases betas on Tuesdays, so my guess is going to be on June 25th. Now, we're not going to see the public beta until later on. So we're not going to see the public beta until July. Now, after Beta 2 comes out on the 25th, we're probably going to have another 2-week period between betas. So that would mean that we would not see developer beta 3 until Tuesday, July 9th, most likely. And then after that is when we should expect to see the public beta. So public beta typically comes out around that time. So it might come a week later, maybe on the 16th, like on July 16th, we could see it around there. So I would say anytime from July 9th through July 16th or 17th is when we can probably expect to see the public beta, the first public beta of iOS 18. Okay, so now we need to set the record straight about Apple Intelligence, because there is a lot of misinformation out there and a lot of people who are really just confused as to what it is and how it works. So let's break it down. So first off, Apple Intelligence is just the name of Apple's upcoming AI features that are coming later this year to the iPhone, the iPad, and the Mac. And they're going to be using a combination of in-house, on-device AI models, cloud-based models, and even leveraging ChatGPT, because we did see the OpenAI and Apple announcement get confirmed, which we'll talk more about the details on that later on, because that's pretty interesting in itself. Anyways, some of the features that Apple's able to accomplish with Apple Intelligence is with writing, for example. So you're going to be able to auto-generate, proofread, and rewrite your text anywhere that you write it, even in third-party applications. We're going to have AI emoji, where you can create AI-generated emoji based on what you're typing. And there's also going to be an image playground that lets you generate personalized images from prompts. Of course, we have Siri 2.0, which is going to be the new Siri that's going to sound more natural. It's going to remember context across requests. It's going to have on-screen awareness, more control over apps and actions, and also a fresh new look with what looks like one of the best animations Apple's ever done. And a lot of other changes, like being able to remove objects from photos, being able to summarize all your notifications on the lock screen, and much more. And the big way that Apple is able to differentiate between every other competitor in the market is, of course, with their privacy, because Apple Intelligence runs on device when possible, but for more complex tasks, those are sent to Apple's private cloud compute environment. It's essentially a server, and Apple says that this server cryptographically ensures that iPhone, iPad, and Mac do not talk to a server unless its software has been publicly logged for inspection. And these servers are built on Apple Silicon, and the data is never saved in the cloud. And plus, if you access ChatGPT through an Apple device, your IP address will be obscured, and OpenAI will not be storing any requests. Oh, and of course, all of the AI features will be opt-in, so they will be off by default, so it's not going to be forced onto anybody. You will have to go in and turn these on. And by the way, that ChatGPT integration is a key point here, because a lot of people heard the news of Apple Intelligence and they just assumed that Apple Intelligence is just a clone of ChatGPT. They're basically just taking ChatGPT and putting it in the iPhone, and that is not what's going on here. So, think about it like this. So ChatGPT is going to be the third option for AI on the iPhone. So first you have the on-device tasks for all the features that we mentioned above, and then you have private cloud compute for more complex tasks, and then as a last resort, you have ChatGPT if neither of the top two options serve the result that you were looking for. So if you ask something that's, super specific and your device is going to have to go way back in time and reference a lot of different sources, then that might require ChatGPT, and that's when you'll need to use that. And one important thing to note here as well is that if you do decide to use ChatGPT, you will get a prompt prompt on screen that ensures that you know that you're using ChatGPT. Like you'll have to press, yes, I want to use ChatGPT every time you put in a query. So it's not going to happen just automatically like a lot of people made it seem. And there's even going to be an option to just say, no, I never want to use ChatGPT, and it will never even ask you, it will never even prompt you to use ChatGPT in the future. And the cool thing about differentiating between on-device and cloud-based tasks and even ChatGPT is that there's an algorithm on board on the devices compatible that is going to tell the iPhone if it should do the task on device or if it should send it off to the cloud. So all that process is happening on device and very quickly. And by the way, I said compatible devices because the only devices that will be able to take advantage of the new Apple Intelligence features are the iPhone 15 Pro and 15 Pro Max and newer, and any iPad or Mac with the M1 chip or later. And the reason for this, I believe, is because it's based on RAM. So Apple needs at least 8 gigabytes of RAM to, be able to actually have these on-device models and have all this processing power going on the back end. They need all of the memory that they can get. So you do need 8 gigs of RAM or more, which even the iPhone 15 does not have. The iPhone 15 has 6 gigabytes. So I think that's the big bottleneck here is the RAM. So I said there's a misunderstanding. Where is the misunderstanding? Well, here's where it gets interesting, because if you remember on social media earlier this week, Elon Musk was basically the reason that Apple caught a lot of backlash from this AI announcement. So he posted a meme shortly after WWDC implying that Apple would siphon your data and send it to OpenAI, which clearly, as I just told you, is not accurate. But of course, that did not stop him, because he continued to post and later stated that he would ban Apple devices due to these AI features. So anybody who worked at Tesla could not have an Apple device if they wanted to work there. They would just have to put them in a locker and not take them in to Tesla, which I don't think is going to happen. I think it's an empty threat, but that was pretty interesting to see on social media, and it led to a lot of people just completely getting misinformed of what was actually going on with Apple Intelligence. So that's kind of where the mass misunderstanding came from. Even Apple fans were like, questioning themselves. They're like, oh, should we even be cheering on Apple Intelligence if it's such a privacy threat like Elon is saying? A lot of people were confused. So I hope this video and this section of the video helped clear it up that no, there's no privacy threats. This is Apple we're talking about. We've trusted them with our data for, a long time now, and I think it's going to be just fine with AI. And again, even when it comes to the ChatGPT stuff, that's going to be completely opt-in, and even then, the data goes through an Apple server before it goes to, OpenAI, and your IP address is going to be scrambled, so it won't even have your, your exact IP address. So I just think that this was completely blown out of proportion and just a lot of misinformation out there. But yeah, my overall thoughts on Apple Intelligence is very strong. I mean, I think this is probably the biggest moment in Apple history in a long time. I cannot remember the last time I felt so bullish and so excited for the future of Apple, because this truly seems like it's innovative. Like we haven't really seen anything innovative from Apple in a while, aside from maybe the Vision Pro back there. But, this is pretty innovative to me because it's not just AI features we've seen before. Apple's actually able to use all the data they have on you already and use that as more of like a personalized AI assistant. Like for the image creation, for example, if you say, you put in a prompt, I want my mom to have a cowboy hat on and be on the beach. It will create an image of that, and it's going to already know who your mom is based on your Photos application and all the data that you already have. So, it's going to be able to just tie in personal things about you, and it's going to be able to create whatever you want to create or perform actions that are based on, the context that you already have in your device, your people, your contacts, your notes, your journal, all of that. And a key note here as well is that Apple is not actually training their models using your data. So that's another, discrepancy there, that some people thought that Apple is going to train their models using your personal data. That is not the case either. So yeah, I'm very excited for Apple Intelligence, as you can tell, and I hope this helped kind of clear up what it's all about. Now, I also wanted to touch on the Apple and OpenAI partnership, because I think one of the biggest questions going into this was, is OpenAI going to pay Apple, or is Apple going to pay OpenAI? You could really see it going both ways, because remember, Google pays Apple to be the default search engine. They pay them a lot of money. So that really had everybody questioning, who's going to pay who here? Well, it looks like neither party is paying each other. And that's because, according to a Bloomberg report, Apple believes that the exposure of putting ChatGPT on hundreds of millions of devices is of equal or greater value than monetary payments. Now, Apple does still plan on making money from AI AI via revenue sharing with OpenAI or whoever else they partner with in the future. And the strategy is to take a cut from AI partners that monetize results in chatbots on Apple platforms. And what's interesting is that there's a quote that says Apple believes that AI could chip away at the billions of dollars it gets from its Google search deal because users will favor chatbots and other tools over search engines. And then finally, let's talk about another crazy AirTag story. So this time, a man in Virginia was fed up after somebody broke into his van and stole his tools not once, but twice. So to ensure he'd catch the thieves the next time it happened, he put AirTags inside of many of his larger tools, and sure enough, the thieves returned. So once he noticed that the items were stolen, he pulled up the Find My app, saw the location, and called the police to report it. The tools were tracked to a storage unit, but what the police uncovered next made the police chief state that this is, quote, one of the largest theft cases not only in the county, but in this region. And that's because the storage unit had about 15,000 additional stolen tools inside, but that wasn't the only storage unit that was filled with stolen tools. Police found a total of 12 different locations where these stolen goods were stored, and the total street value of those tools was around $3 to $5 million. Now, these tools were stolen from local businesses, cars, homes, and fellow carpenters by what turned out to be a ring of thieves. And the detectives identified about 80 victims so far, but they expect that number to rise. Now, there have not been any arrests so far in this case, but there have been several suspects identified. So that is wild. You never know what these AirTags are going to uncover when you put them in something that gets stolen. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. As always, if you did, I would appreciate if you give it a thumbs up. Also, make sure to subscribe for next week's Apple Weekly episode. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.